Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Thanks for being here. This is another edition of the Edge of Adventure podcast. My name is Adam Asher. Great to have you with us, whether you're listening on the audio version of the show to the audio version of the show, or if you're watching the video version, however you prefer to be a part of this. I just thank you. Appreciate you being a part of the Edge of Adventure and all the different organizations that we get to know. And today we are going to be traveling to Russia and to Georgia to get to know these locations and to get to know the work of an organization, a foundation called St. Gregory's Foundation. And joining me today to talk about this organization and the work they do is Jane Jones, one of the directors for the foundation. Jane, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, it's great to have you. And today, by the way, you're joining us from where?
Chester in England.
Chester in England. Well, it's great to have you on the show, and it'll be great to get to know the work of the foundation in Russia and Georgia. So let's put it into perspective, both for me and for the audience. The foundation, St. Gregory's Foundation, works primarily where, and who are you helping?
Well, we are based in London. The actual work is done. This charity was set up in London by expatriate Russian people when the Russian Federation was formed. And we have various projects in Russia and Georgia which we support from England. We raise the money in England and it goes over to the projects in Russia and Georgia. We have a major project in St. Petersburg working with orphanage leavers. We have a project in the north of Karelia, which is based around a church parish and the work of the parish priest. We have a project in Moscow, which is our newest project, working with disabled children. We have another couple of projects more in St. Petersburg than anywhere, but they're not exclusively what we support. We also have a wonderful project in Georgia called Mukordinali, where they work with young offenders, and they have the most incredible success rate in keeping young people out of the prison system, providing free legal aid, and sometimes hosting them if they've got nowhere to live, if they're homeless, and working with them. So our projects are, in various locations where there is a need.
Various locations and various different types of needs. And so I think we're going to just talk a little bit about each of those as we get to know the work of St. Gregory's Foundation. And let's start with your work among and for and with those who have been orphaned.
Well, the term orphanage is actually a bit misleading because most of the young people we work with have parents. They are social orphans, if you like, and correctly we would call them children's homes, but they are still known as orphanages. They are looked after in the orphanages until they get to 16, and then they find themselves out in independent living with very few life skills. And so we support a project called the Sunflower Centre, who work with life skills with young orphanage leavers, teenagers who want especially a lot of them who get pregnant and need help parenting their own children. Because if you're not careful, there can be a whole cycle. The young person leaves the orphanage, she gets pregnant, she doesn't know what to do with the baby, she doesn't know which end to put a napkin on. And so they then get taken into care and start the cycle all over again. And Sunflower Centre actually supports young parents. They teach them parenting skills. And we've been doing this for years now. And that is a most successful project. They have a 90-something% success rate in keeping families together. They are predominantly girls because they're the ones who get pregnant, obviously. But there are young men as well. And they teach them parenting skills to the men as well. Well, they're very often young boys. And so they use psychologists and counsellors and people who train behavioural issues with children, how to feed them, how to dress them, how to look after them when they're ill, all of the parenting skills that we take for granted if you're brought up in a normal family. But these young people, they've never seen it. They're kept in year groups in the orphanages, so they don't mix with older children or younger children, so they literally don't know what a baby looks like. And so they work with them and have a fantastic success rate. And it's I've seen this project. I mean, one of the great things about St Gregory's, because we're so small, we can all get very much involved in what's going on. And I've been to see this project 4 times now, and I met some of the young parents who are so grateful for the chance they've been given to keep their own babies and bring their own children up. And in fact, one of the ways St Gregory's works is to support expertise. And we actually paid for 2 of the counsellors or psychologists who work with Sunflower to come over to England, and we showed them examples of good practice here. And we brought them up to Chester, actually, from London, to see a charity we have just outside Chester, which does very similar work, keeping families together, keeping the children out of social services, and keeping the families together. And they were very impressed indeed. And so they were able to go back then to St Petersburg and apply what they'd seen to the work that they do there. And it is, an ongoing project which is extremely successful. We had Giving Tuesday yesterday, where we raised lots and lots of money. And that Sunflower Centre, that project was the focus of our fundraising. And they were visited a few weeks ago by Prince Michael of Kent, who is our patron. They were a bit disappointed. The children apparently wanted him to turn up wearing a crown. And when he didn't turn up wearing a crown, just wearing a suit, they were a bit disappointed. But it's great that he is so involved with what we do, the work we do. And it is a most wonderful organisation. The advantage of the one they saw in Chester was the fact that they are residential. They have cottages and old farm buildings, which they've converted into residential accommodation, and they can keep the families there for a couple of years. Now, Sunflower are not able to do that because they don't have the premises. So the young families visit them, and they are now trying to raise some money for premises so that they can, work with the families, have them in a flat or something like that, and can actually help them in that way. So that is the orphanage leavers, and we have programs to help them manage their money, because they've never handled money in an orphanage. They have no pocket money; everything is provided for them. So when they come out of the orphanage and they're given money, they don't know what to do with it. And a lot of, sadly, there are a lot of people out there to exploit them. If they've got money in their pocket, and there are drug dealers and there are all sorts of unsavory people who will take advantage of those young people. And so Sunflower help them with those sort of life skills as well: how to actually run a home, how to manage their money, how to pay their rent, how to pay the bills, go shopping. So basic skills there. And it's a highly successful program, and we're so proud of it. But the amazing thing about the Russians is they are so resourceful, that they are such clever people, and they need very little in the way of support from us, actually. So they tell us what they would like to do, and we provide them with either money or expertise or experiences which will help them to achieve those goals.
Jane Jones is my guest today here on the Edge of Adventure. We're talking about St. Gregory's Foundation, and as she established, they are a foundation that is headquartered in the United Kingdom. They're in London. She's joining us today from England. And the focus, though, we're talking about their work in Russia and Georgia and the wonderful people there. And of course, we've already discussed that there are needs, as there are everywhere in the world.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And is one of the things is I have researched and gotten to know the foundation. There's so many different ways that the foundation is serving. Now, one of the things we've talked about so far, again, and I'm putting all this together here for both for me and for the listening and viewing audience. One of the ways is the children's homes, and you bring up a point that does come up often on the Edge of Adventure, which is we do use the term orphanage, and around the world there are orphanages that are orphanages in a traditional sense. What we think of it, kids who don't have parents and they're living at the orphanage. But there's also children's homes where they are in many ways without the leadership of their parents, but they may have the parents, but they're without the provision or the leadership. And so these children's homes provide so much in terms of a place to be protected and provided for and taught, and that's where you guys come in. However, I believe you guys also work with children, perhaps teenagers, who are homeless, who don't have a home?
Well, in the north of Russia, in Kondopoga, which is in Karelia, which is virtually next door to Finland, there is a most wonderful Orthodox parish which was set up in 1992. Their previous priest was shot in 1932 by Stalin's people, and their present priest, Father Lev Bolsakov, took over in 1992 and has built the parish up to a wonderful hub, not just for Christianity, but also for social activities. He has the most fantastic community team, and they feed the homeless. They help with children, and they help with with teenagers who get into trouble. And here in Chester Cathedral, where I'm very involved, we actually support a project in the parish in Karelia, which feeds street children. Now, these street children are not strictly speaking homeless in that they go back to perhaps a one-room flat and sleep overnight, and then they're turfed out the next morning onto the streets and they have to fend for themselves. There's a lot of alcoholism in Russia. The post-communist Russia has lost a lot of its kind of foundations, if you like. People don't necessarily have jobs, and they've lost the security of knowing where to go, where to be, what to do all the time. And so a lot of alcoholism is now emerging, and the life expectancy for men is very short. I think when I first got involved, the life expectancy for men was 69. Women are running everything. Women are running hospitals, schools, factories, because the men are dying very young. And so there are people who just may have a one room, literally one room, and if they have children, quite often single parents, they can't look after those children. They spend the day on the streets. Now, Father Liev and his team take them in, and they feed them and they help them through school. They find clothes for them and equipment for school. And we support all sorts of projects there. He has all sorts of innovations that he does, workshops and training and teaching, summer camps to keep the teenagers busy. And it is the most thriving community there. At first, social services were slightly worried about them, slightly suspicious of them. But now social services have come to realise they're actually doing a very valuable job and saving social services a great deal of money as well. So they work hand in hand now with social services. Social services recommend children who are vulnerable, and they send them down to Father Liev and Mother Julia and their team, and to be fed and for them to keep an eye on them. But they're not there all day. They just will go for a meal, or they go for certain activities and clubs and things like that. So that is a most wonderful project that we support. We're also supporting education there. We've actually got involved in some English tuition. So we've provided through an agency, a tutorial agency, some English lessons for children and some catch-up lessons for them during the COVID lockdown. And during COVID, of course, during the lockdown, the really bad one at the beginning, the children were not allowed to come onto the church premises. They have a big house at the side of the church called Parish House, where the children are fed. They have kitchens and so on. And the priest and his wife lived there, and they weren't allowed on the premises because of the risk of infection. So Father Lee and his team managed to get hold of food from local businesses, local shops and so on, and they were delivering bags of food to the children's home addresses, which was supplied by social services. So they've kept going during COVID in a most wonderful way. And when 4 years ago, Father Liev and 3 of his team came to stay with us in Chester, and we took them to the food bank to show them, what we do with hungry people in this country. And they were absolutely bowled over. They didn't think they could do it in Russia because they said people won't give food in this way. People donate in various places, supermarkets and churches and so on. But the people in this food bank were talking to Father Liev and his team and said, actually, you've got a harder job than we have in England, because there's no tradition of volunteering in Russia. There's no tradition of giving for other people because the communists discouraged that very much. And so they had a wonderful interaction. And I think a lot of the work I've certainly been involved in has the spin-off effect has been the interaction between Russia and England. The people who've been here and seen what we do, not to rub their noses in and say, look how wonderfully well off we are, but to say, we share your problems, we share your worries and concerns, and this is how we tackle it. And then people go back to Russia. And my group that I'm involved with, we've had lots of people go and visit them in Russia over the years. And so even though I've only been a director for 5 years, I've actually been involved with St Gregory's for 14 years, since I went on my first trip, which was organised by Chester Cathedral. And I was so involved and so taken up with what they were doing. They asked me 5 years ago to go onto the board of directors. But over the years, I've seen the way things have changed and developed, and met the same people, gone back to me. And I think that interaction is one of the most valuable things we do. And that is what we do. There's 2 young girls from Kondopoga, from the north in Karelia, who are going to come and stay with me next July, COVID willing. And they will go back, and they will then talk to other young people, and they'll talk to their friends and family. And it's this exchange, as well as the actual money. The money we send them is only a very small part of the whole picture, actually. The friendship, the support, the care, and the expertise and the advice and the experts we send are all, a major part of what we're doing.
Jane Jones is my guest today here on The Edge of Adventure, and she is representing the board of directors at St. Gregory's Foundation, talking about the amazing work and the amazing leaders that you and your team work with on the ground in Russia, in Georgia, in these different locations, in different cities. I do want to talk about leadership, and I want to start. First of all, you've mentioned him. Let's talk about Prince Michael of Kent, and put that into perspective for so many of us around the world, people who might not have the perspective that you guys have there. Put that into perspective, and then also the other leaders that you're working with on the ground. Be sure that if we haven't already talked about them, brag on a couple more.
Yeah. Well, one I would very much like to mention is Dr. Katya Kluchkova. When I went the first time in 2007, she was running a small project in a very rundown flat, in a very rundown building, with audio equipment that she was taking into maternity wards and testing babies' hearing. Now, one of the major things we do in Russia is changing attitudes, because things changed so drastically, so dramatically in 1992. And a lot of children were taken into care because there was something wrong with them, rather than because they shouldn't be mixing with other people. And so deaf children were taken into care instead of being cared for in their own families. And Katya started this project to diagnose them straight away before problems really emerged. And she, as I say, is a doctor. She's a neurologist and a pediatrician. And she gave us a wonderful presentation in perfect English, very dynamic, energetic, imaginative woman. You just feel tired just listening to her, because she's so energetic. She does so much. And over the 14 years, I've seen her work grow and grow and grow and grow. The next time I went 2 years later, she'd moved into different premises. She'd introduced physiotherapy, which didn't exist as a separate medical entity at that time. She had also started an enterprise to raise money for the parents of disabled children who couldn't work, so they had to do work at home. And they were making toys. I have here a couple of little samples, a little mouse and a little cat. And they were making these felt toys in her new premises. They were coming and getting the wool and making the toys and selling them to a Swedish company, Swedish toy maker. And it was a thriving little thing. And so these children she was looking after the deaf children, she was looking after children who were disabled and needed physiotherapy. The next time we went, she got even bigger premises, and she'd got the most fantastic setup. And she also was working with a disabled school now, which is unique in the whole St. Petersburg region. It just doesn't exist anywhere else. That's in Kondopoga, actually. That was this summer, that picture that's just come on. And Father Liev and his team, for the first time, had been looking after 10 disabled youngsters in Candapoga, and they had a summer camp and took these youngsters on the summer camp with them. And it was very good for the children, the youngsters, the able-bodied youngsters in Candapoga. They'd never met disabled people before because they say they're hidden away normally. And so that was a very successful project. But the Dynamica Centre, which is the school in St. Petersburg, Katya again was involved, fully ahead, forging on, thinking, planning, talking. She had the most fantastic ability to communicate. And now her latest, excuse me, just look at my notes because I want to get this right. The Ministry of Health in the Russian Federation recommended to the Ministry of Labour, the Russian Federation, professional standards. And the professionals, that's Sunflower, that's Prince Michael Sunflower on the screen, sorry. These standards based on international standards for work that is helping with physiotherapy and occupational therapy. And Katya was on the board with the Ministry of Health, and she has gone from this little flat, which is about the size of my study here. She's gone to now being on a committee with the Minister of Health. And she's just such an incredible woman. So if I wanted to pinpoint any one of our people on the ground we support, those pictures there are from a project, our newest project, which is in Moscow. And that is working with autistic youngsters. And they doing most incredible work. And that is an example of how we've changed and developed over the years, because they're using computer technology to help the children to communicate. And they've got what's it called? One of these printers that prints 3D printer. They've got a 3D printer, and they're printing out things that would be terribly expensive for them to buy. They're translating computer software into English, into Russian. Sorry, English computer software into Russian. This is from the Sunflower project, helping young people. There's an emphasis now away from orphanages to fostering and adoption, trying to get these institutions, break them down. So that was a fundraiser, but you can see the little girl there. This is one of the things we were supporting, and that's in Moscow. So we have some amazing people working with these children, and they are so intelligent and so imaginative, and they don't need us to go over and say, do this, do that. We need to listen and say, what do you need from us? What would help you? What are your ideas? What are your projects? How can we help you?
So Jane, you were talking about your friend, right? Your friend that was you listen to her talk and you hear about all the wonderful things that she's doing and how hard she works and how active she and her people are, and how I think you said the term, you said you even just feel tired, right? Listening to her.
She's been over here and trained, done medical training here. We've sponsored her to come over here and do further medical training. And she's also set up physiotherapy as a separate discipline, medical discipline, in the universities in St. Petersburg and Moscow. And there's just no stopping this woman.
Yeah, but so where I'm going with that, Jane, is she reminds me of you. Because now I'm listening.
She's a good 20 years younger than me. I'm 74, and she's.
But you hear this energy in your voice and this passion and all that the organization is doing, that the foundation is doing. My gosh, and you're only just kind of scratching the surface of all the different people you work with and all the different types of things, and it's so much to cover. But it is so great to be getting at least a little idea, just a small piece of all that you guys are doing. But I was just going to say, what is the key to success when you are doing these many projects and working?
The key to success is communications, keeping in touch with everybody. Our executive secretary, who is Russian herself, she visits all of these projects every year. And we get as many people as we can going over there and seeing what's going on. We also have written communication. We have to have reports from them, and we have a board meeting coming up. We will look at all the reports of the way they spend our money. We are a small charity, so we can keep very close eye on where the money is spent, as well as where it's raised. And I think that is the key to success. We're small enough to stay in touch with everything that's going on. And we all know each other, and we help them to communicate with us as well. I mean, if they're struggling to fill reports in, fill forms in, we comply with all of the requirements of the Russian government. We comply with all the requirements of the English Charity Commission. And so, but if they need some help to do that, then we will provide clerical help for them. But it is so, we're so good at actually keeping a close eye on what's going on and knowing the people, the contact with the people, the individual people. And for me, it's very personal. You know, all the work I do a lot of work, fundraising work here in Chester especially, and it feels deeply personal what is going on. And I think that is one of the successes, the reasons we're successful, because all of the directors are committed, because it feels personal. Nobody's doing it just as a business or anything like that. And what makes it very personal for me, I've got to show you this young man here. He's upside down. He is one of the children that were being looked after by the project in Parish House in Condopoga. And I defy anybody to look at that little face and not want to help. You know, it's as much as I can do. My own children said to me when the first time I went, "Mom, don't bring a Russian orphan home in your suitcase, will you?" But it is, you know, it is very difficult to walk away from need like that child had. He looks so bewildered, he looks so frightened, and he is so hungry. And so it's very personal, and we keep it personal by making sure there's not too much bureaucracy between us and the projects, that we fulfill all our requirements, all legal requirements, and we help the projects to do that. So we're very, very closely involved in what they are doing, and they are keeping us in touch with everything that they're doing and all of their requirements. And I think it is a very personal thing.
Jane Jones is my guest today. She's representing the board of directors from St. Gregory's Foundation. And of course, we're talking about their work in Russia and Georgia and the different locations there, and the many different types of services and works that they have, the leaders that they have on the ground and the way they support them, and all that they do to serve these precious, precious people. Jane, you said you can't. You held up the picture of the young boy, and you just sort of talk about how much you want to help him, right? When you know his story and you see his picture. So let's just talk about that in general, right? When you see this type of need, when you see these precious people who might find themselves facing some challenge or a disadvantage, or their life is tough in some way, you said that you can't just walk away. Why not? Why can't you just walk away?
Well, you could, obviously, nobody would stop you, but I don't feel, I mean, I'm motivated very much by my Christian faith, and Matthew's Gospel, chapter 25, says, you know, as much as you do it for one of these, my children, you do it for me. And it's very much, you know, a spiritual thing as well. And I first got involved through the church, although St. Gregory's obviously helps anybody. It's completely, totally ecumenical. It's not a religious organization. But everybody's got their own reason for being so committed to the work we're doing. The Russians themselves, you know, Julia is Russian, our executive secretary. But I think there is a perception in this country that Russia is full of oligarchs, and that they've all got shed loads of money. And when we went the first time and we got off the beaten trail up to the north of Karelia, we came across the most incredible poverty. We were in one village with no running water. They had electricity, but no running, and they were washing their pots and their clothes in the river. We were quite shocked, I think, by the poverty we saw, but also by the lovely, lovely, lovely people. And there were 25 of us went on the first visit in 2007 from Chester Cathedral. And all we wanted to do when we got back was to help. To a man and a woman, we wanted to do something. We set up a fundraising program to help that specific project. And although now I'm a director, I get involved in all of the other ones as well. But I think if you've been and you've looked somebody in the eye, there was a lovely woman who was the sort of caretaker of a very tiny little church. And there were tears in her eyes when she met us. And she said, we didn't think people in the West cared. And we were all going lump in the throat, and we all had the same experience. We all came back fired up to help out. And I think you can read things in newspapers, you can see things on the TV, but there's no substitute for actually going and seeing and meeting people and eating with them. They entertained us at pancakes, and they're such hospitable people and so warm and so loving. And I found so much love in that in that place. It is wonderful. And I think that's the important thing, really. And that's why you can't walk away, because I feel that my family, I've got 13 grandchildren, and I couldn't bear the thought of any of my 13 grandchildren being as hungry as that little boy clearly was. And so it does become a very personal thing.
Jane, there's a theme that comes up here on the program, on the podcast from time to time. Well, maybe it comes up all the time, that there may be different types of needs. We may come from areas where the need is different, or the culture is different, or the language and the background and the history, so on and so forth. But when you get right down to it, we're all the same, and that's the part that binds us together as the human race, and the opportunity, just as people have helped me when I needed it, then when I'm the person who can give the help, can I walk away? Can I walk away and not give that help? Can I look at that need and then choose to not do anything about it, knowing that I can and or have a calling to do so? Those are the questions we delve into.
It is a calling. You're right. Yeah.
Well, you have to. I mean, because no one can do it all. Like you
No.
can't, as one person, fix all
Yeah,
the needs in the world.
I'm 74 and I can't go and physically help these children, but I can have all sorts of events, coffee mornings, afternoon teas, concerts, art. I've had all sorts of things, and send the money, and because they are very capable of helping themselves. And obviously in London, Julia and the directors, we raise money from big organisations, and we get grants, and we get big things like the Giving Tuesday yesterday, raising over £11,000. And so we do the big fundraising, but we do the small fundraising as well, the fun things, because nobody says that you can't have fun when you're helping other people. It doesn't apply, and so it is very important. You mentioned culture. That was the reason I first went in 2007. I was curious because I grew up in the Cold War era, and I love Russian music and Russian literature and Russian art. And I couldn't reconcile the picture we were being given of great big women in boiler suits driving concrete mixers and the concrete architecture with the culture of Tolstoy and Dostoevsky and Tchaikovsky. And so I went out of curiosity, because I love the Russian culture. And when I went, it was just an eye-opener. And that culture is still there. The very musical people in the parish in the north of Russia. And we've had some wonderful cultural experiences there. And that's all still there. And it's fantastic. And the choirs in the churches are just unbelievable. I mean, they only have to sing 2 notes and I'm in tears. And it is, they are very, very well educated and musical people. And it's a familiar culture to me, because I grew up listening to that music and looking at that art and reading those novels. And so culturally, there was a good match for me when I first got involved.
Well, you bring up a point. We won't go too far down this road, but oftentimes there are images and perceptions that are painted of a people or a culture that when you do your own research or you experience it firsthand, you go to the place, the location, you find out, wait a minute, this was misrepresented.
This is not how I saw it. Yeah, I thought
it's not maybe how it was presented to me, and that's the beautiful thing about.
This is why I said earlier, this interaction, this exchange between us and the people in Russia is so useful, so valuable. Because the more we learn about other people's cultures, the more they learn about ours. Well, the more peace and harmony we have.
Absolutely. Sometimes I think in in life, not just internationally, but just around the world. Sometimes the divisions are stoked
Oh
to
yes.
to separate us when we
Yeah.
when you spend time with the people, even though they may be very different
Yeah.
in some ways, you realize, my gosh, they are just like me. So I
What
want to
unites us
also
is more powerful than what divides us.
agreed, agreed,
Mm.
Jane. I also wanted to then talk briefly Prince Michael of Kent.
Mm.
His role is what?
Well, he's our patron, which means he's our figurehead, if you like. His name is on the on the top of the the paper. And I've got a St Gregory's newsletter here, which we send out twice a year, and we've got his name mentioned on here. And so that attracts people. People think, right, this must be a good pucker organisation because Prince Michael is involved. But he isn't just a figurehead. He is very interested in what we do. And as you know, the royal family in England were related to the royal family in Russia. And so, there is a link. And he's taken an active part in what we do. He comes to our dinners, and he's I'd say he's been to visit the Sunflower Project in St Petersburg without a crown. And so he's a lovely chap. And one of our directors actually used to be his PA, and so that's how we have, I think, the link there. And so so we think he's very much part of our family, the St Gregory's family. Oh, that's Katya. That picture there, that's Katya, the doctor I was talking about. That's lovely. Right.
And she's got all that energy. She's walking up these stairs.
You can see by the smile on her face, can't you? She's got lots of
She,
energy. This lady is extraordinary. That's a communist flat in St. Petersburg that she used to rent. And she used to put together parcels of food and clothes like any big city. London, New York, Berlin, Paris. You have a lot of people who are homeless and who don't have a bed for the night, don't have food, sit begging on the streets. Although you don't see very many beggars in St. Petersburg, I have to say. But she rents this former communist flat, and she stored all her clothes and food parcels and so on. And when we helped her with some money, those 3-tier bunk beds, by the way, are, well, when we first went in 2007. This is my photo actually that I took in 2007 of her. They were for rent for I think it was £3 a night. You could have a bed for the night there, because St. Petersburg is still a centre of pilgrimage. It has one of every, goes right back to Peter the Great, one of every kind of denomination. It has a mosque, it has a synagogue, it has temples, it has Catholic Church, Church of England, Orthodox churches. And if you want to go there on a pilgrimage, you could have a bed there. Now, this is how it first started. This is the people who first started St. Gregory's. And the first thing they did was to send physical goods. They would fill a container with things that people needed in Russia, and then send it, and it would be distributed. Now, we soon got away from that, and we don't do this anymore. That is a really historic photo. We do still. I've got a wheelchair that collapses, and it's in a bag. And next time I go to Russia, I've got to take this wheelchair with me. The first time we went to St. Petersburg, we took 22 pairs of crutches with us, which had been donated to us. And the bus driver was fascinated. He thought we were all disabled people, because we got off the plane and we got onto his coach, all carrying a pair of crutches. And he said, our old people are amazing in England. And they were all wearing crutches, but they're jumping on and off this bus. So we take things that people need. But in those days, that was 30 years ago, that photograph was from, that was the way they did it. But obviously that's been refined, it's been changed, it's been developed, it's evolved into a much bigger and more sophisticated setup now. And we work mostly with expertise, with help, with advice, with money that's targeted where our partners on the ground need it. So that's as out of date in a way of dealing with. I mean, charities have to do this, and certainly, as we've had the COVID pandemic, we've had to adapt a lot to the way we do things. So a lot of things like podcasts and Zoom meetings and the ATEC Center in St. Peter's in Moscow dealing with helping the parents to work with their disabled children. They couldn't have them on the premises, but they were able to interact online with the parents and give them sessions to do even physiotherapy and things like that. It's adapted very well to the challenges that were thrown up by the COVID situation. And I think when you look at some of the things we've been doing through information technology now and compare with what we did 30 years ago in that photograph of sending containers full of clothes and baby clothes and stuff like that, it's like coming from a different century, really, which is a different century because it was 30 years ago.
Jane Jones is my guest today, joining us from St. Gregory's Foundation. Jane, how can the audience help? Obviously, we understand the need for funds. That's something. Tell us about that. But are there any other ways that people can be of encouragement?
Yes, I mean, to get involved, to actually take an interest, to get onto the website, to sign up for the monthly newsletter. This newsletter gives you all sorts of details about the charity and about their work they do. And that's a workshop, and that's an article, the last newsletter about the 30th anniversary, and share that information with other people. So spread the word. Money, obviously, there are details in the newsletter. There's details online on the website, which is on screen now, for donations. But you don't have to just give money for nothing. There is a shop which we only opened in July, which I'm running from here. And we've got gifts, Matryoshka dolls and Hochlamar things, painted things. And we've got toiletries from Siberia, fabulous scented, herbal scented, organic toiletries. We've got books in Russian. We've got a few books in English, but we're going to get some more books in English. We've got mugs. We've got a variety of mugs. We've got paintings. We've got all sorts of things on our shop. So if you want to give to us, but get something in return, then do go on to the shop from the website and have a look, and I will send it to you. But taking an interest. I mean, the people in Russia have often said to us, the fact that we care, the fact that we take an interest, which they are so surprised by. They still see us as the enemy in a way, and they are surprised because they were subjected to their propaganda in the same way that we were during the Cold War. And so breaking down those barriers is really crucial. And anything that people can do to sort of look and take an interest, that's very, very valuable. And obviously donate and gift aided. We sell Christmas cards as well. We have 6 different varieties of Christmas cards. I think you put up a picture of the Christmas cards earlier on.
We did. There was a picture. And I'm going to encourage everybody to go to the website. The website is stgregory'sfoundation.org.uk. Now, you're a retired teacher?
Yes.
Okay. Well, you've done a great job today.
You can take the teacher out of the classroom, but you can't take the classroom out of the teacher.
Listen,
so that's why I had to put you right. I'm very sorry,
which means I've got to finish up this interview before you give me homework because I don't have that kind of time.
Absolutely, I'm going to test you on it later on.
Please. I already feel so inadequate. Please don't do this. Thank you, Jane. You're awesome. Thanks for your time today. Thanks for all, just you, but please pass our appreciation and admiration along to the team, both there in the UK and also in Russia and Georgia, all of the people serving. I mean, just please know that we see you and we value and honor what you're doing.
And we do appreciate the opportunity to show people what we're all about. We appreciate that very much. Thank you for asking us to take part in this.
Well, you're more than welcome. And again, I appreciate your time and all that you do. And we look forward to having you back on the show in the future as we'll get an update, I'm sure. In the meantime, again, thank you. And on behalf of everybody that you're representing today, the entire team, we just want to let you know that we appreciate what you do.
Thank you. And on behalf of all those children we help, thank you very much.